Before we can start into the Angular part, I need to describe one additional concept. Without that, it would be very hard to practically use RxJS in Angular. Yes, you have a question before we get started? Now I need to describe one final thing in order for you to be successful with Angular and RxJS. Let me show you something. Let's do, for this sample you do not need to follow along, okay? Just understand the concept. I take one interval here, this one. Let's say const observable 1 equals 2. Take this interval stuff with the map and the take and so on, but we do not subscribe yet. Okay? Now I take this observable 1, and I subscribe, and I simply print it on the screen. And get the idea? Well, pretty trivial. We did that now multiple times. So the result should be 0, 10, 20, gone. Right? But now it's getting a little bit more complicated because I will say set timeout after 1 second. I want to do another subscribe with exactly the same code as above. Understand what I'm doing? I have a single observable. I subscribe to this observable, then I wait for, let's say, 1100 milliseconds. And then, only then, I subscribe again to the observable. What would you expect to be printed on the screen? Guess. Yes?
10, 10, 20, 20, 30, 40.
Okay, let's see. That's a guess. It's nearly as you said. The important thing is, although we have a single observable, here we have a single observable, one, just one, we get the entire output twice. It doesn't matter that we here wait to subscribe 2 times. So we don't jump into and ignore the first value for the second subscription. If I subscribe, and now listen closely, if I subscribe, I get the entire produced content from the very beginning. To be more specific, the values are newly printed for me when I subscribe. So if I subscribe now, a new generation of values is generated, although I have a single observable. We create an observable when we subscribe. Understand? This is what we do. Now there is something else which is called a subject. And the subject behaves differently. With the subject, we can jump into a running executable and only subscribe to the values that happen after we subscribed. This is what a subject is, and we will need that. Keep that in mind, but for now you should understand that multiple subscriptions lead to multiple generations of values. So if you write in Angular, this will not work here in TypeScript, but if you write something like this, .http client.get of blah, something like this, you save this in a variable, something like const query equals 2, and then you happen to do query.subscribe. And a few lines later, you do another query.subscribe. What do you think happens? You get 2 HTTP requests to the server. Understand what I mean? Every time you subscribe to the HTTP client in Angular, a new HTTP request will be fired to the server. And that's not efficient. Got it? Good. Nice. So let's jump right into Angular. And you know what? I decided today I want to go all in Stack Blitz. So if you want to try it locally, feel free to do so. But I'm going to use Stack Blitz today. just to show you how this works. So if you want to follow along, absolutely no problem. Fire up Stack Blitz and type and click on Angular. I will make it a little bit larger. Normally you can use everything locally, but maybe you haven't worked with Stack Blitz yet, so let's give it a try. By the way, I will stay with the light theme because it works better on the video beamer, but if you don't like the light theme, you can toggle on the left lower corner between dark and light theme. Now if you want to work with forms and RxJS in Angular, you have to go to appmodule.ts, and here you see by default Stack Blitz imports the forms module for you. Can you remember what we did a few weeks ago? Banana in a box binding, does that ring a bell? I told you if you want to use a banana in box binding, you need to import for the forms module. Now we need another module for reactive forms. And it's called, big surprise, Reactive Forms module. So if you want to use RxJS with forms, you have to use the Reactive Forms module. So the first task that you have is to import Reactive Forms module from Angular Forms and to add it to your Angular imports to the module. Please do that. Okay, so now we have the Reactive Forms module here in the module, and that should enable us to use reactive extensions in our app. Let's try that. I have prepared a small little web API for you. Let me quickly demo that web API for you. I deployed it to HTTPS. Let me zoom in so you can follow along, not orf.it, but vehicle data Azure websites.net. And there we say /API/makes. And if you press enter and the demo gods are smiling, then we get a list of car makes. And we can filter these car makes by specifying a question mark, make equal, you can try TO, and the result will be Aston Martin and Toyota. Or if you try make B, that will give you all the car makes with B. And if you type in BM, guess what? You will get back BMW. So we can use this small little demo API for our reactive extensions tries, for our experiments. So essentially what I want to have, let me quickly draw that here. I want to have an input box, let's call it the filter input box. And if the user types in here a T, then I want to have down below, I want to have all the car makes with T. Toyota and Austin, I have no idea. Other car makes with T. I don't know how to write Aston Martin. I'm not a big car fan, so I'm sorry. And if the user changes that to TO, then the filter should be applied, and I think you get the idea, right? Good. This is what I want to build together with you, and this is the API URL. Let's do that. Please open up the app component HTML. And we also later on need the app component TS. You can double click on both files, and then you have both open here on the right hand side, right? Now let's first start the HTML part, okay? We can remove whatever we have here, and we'll just write, and let's say H1 for the title, and this is the car search. Here we want to have a div, and inside of this div we have a label. This label says filter, and then we have an input of type text. This should be the filter label, the filter input. And down below we have an unordered list. And here we have a list item. And here in this list item we will need to repeat for the results. So this is what we want to have. See? You do not need to format this stuff. We want to focus on functionality, not on styling for this example. I think you get the point, right? So let's go to app component TS. We can remove the name here. We don't want that. I can zoom in a little bit so it's easy for you to follow, okay? Let's create a member variable. Let's call it makeFilter. And it should contain a new form control. Form control is the class that represents an input form control in Angular. So form control is something that is built into Angular. And again, I repeat myself consciously, it's representing a form control in Angular. So it's the Angular representation of the input type text. Understand what I mean? Good. We can specify a starting value if we want. So if we would type in here something, then that will be the initial value of the input box. Okay, that's just the default initial value. In our case, an empty string should be fine. Now we need to bind the makeFilter to our input box here. And we can do that. Here we can bind to form control and bind this guy to the makeFilter. Just to demonstrate the point, I can add something here and you see it now gets a default value. So the binding works. I delete the ADSF again and the filter is empty again. So we see the binding really works. This thing is now binding our input to the form control. Can you remember which kind of binding we had a few weeks ago when we repeated the Angular stuff? It had to do with vegetables. Banana in a box binding, exactly. And to be honest, banana in a box binding is for babies. No, I'm just joking. Banana in a box binding is for beginners. Because behind the scenes, in reality, Angular creates form controls. This is for the pros, okay? So Angular pros create form controls and we bind directly to form controls. So I'm joking a little bit just to make sure that you keep it in memory. It's perfectly fine to use ngModal. It works perfectly well. But form control is one level deeper. We now have way more control over what's going on behind the scenes. Yes, you had a question? Exactly. Then they are pros too. No, I'm joking. ngForm is fine. But you get the idea. Okay, this is the form control. And now I want to show you what we can do. Please create a constructor, constructor here. And inside the constructor, you simply say makeFilter.valueChanges. See that one? Sorry, this .makeFilter.valueChanges. And now, surprise, .subscribe. F goes to console log F. Let me show you what's going on here by opening up my application in a new window. You see that one? If you do that, you can press F12 to get the developer tools. And now see what's happening if I type something in. Oh, you see? So what we get is we get in Angular an input box as an observable. This is all we need to do. So I can remove that one. We get the form control and we get a property which says value changes. And guess what this value changes is? An observable. And now we can do all the crazy stuff that we did before with the operators. Let me show you what I mean. For instance, we can say .pipe, please do that, debounce time from RxJS operators, this one. And let's say, I don't know, 250, something like this. Oh, it didn't import it properly, so I have to import it manually. Debounce time from RxJS operators. Again, here, pipe, debounce time, 250. If you did it properly, and you load the application again in a separate window, see if I type fast, nothing changes, and after 250 milliseconds I get a single console log. I can delete everything and I get a single log. It depends on the amount of milliseconds that you specify in debounce time, how long the system will wait until the input stream has stabilized. You get the idea? So if I'm fast in typing, and if I type BM fast, I get a single message, BM. But if I'm slow in typing, I type B, M, W. Get the idea? So this is a practical application of a pipe in RxJS applied to a reactive form. Who can tell me from the top of your head which module I need in order to do an HTTP GET request? HTTP client module, exactly. So let's get the HTTP client module, import HTTP client module, and it is at home in @Angular common HTTP. And we need to import it. The HTTP client module. Here it is. So please do that import and that one. If I'm too fast, let me know, but you should know that from our repetition that we had a few weeks ago. Now in our app component HTML, we can now ask in the constructor for the HTTP client. So we can say private HTTP client, HTTP client. So what you need is the following. This import will be auto-generated, and you need to add this one to your constructor. So now we will do RxJS's magic. Inside of the pipe here, after the debounce time, we will do a switch map. Exactly the switch map that we had before, that we discussed in the marble diagram. F like filter, and we simply say this.http client dot get of string array, because we will get back a string array of makes, and then we will need the URL that I copied into Discord. So I will do a backtick with this one, and here I will simply say $this one and add the filter here. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. Something like this. See the switch map here? So we are switching the trigger, which is the value changes event from the input form, to another observable, to the observable that we get from the web API, and we build the URL by appending the current filter into the URL. Please try to follow along. By the way, I can make your life a little bit easier. I can share my editor URL in Discord. So you can also click on this URL, and then you have whatever I type and save on your machine, and you can copy and paste the code from there. Last but not least, we simply need to store the result in a variable. Let's say resulting makes is a string array, and let's get started with an empty array. And here in the subscribe, we can simply say, now call this m, this.resulting makes equals to m. Understand what I mean? The resulting thing will be a string array because we specified that we get a string array back from the web API and we store it in a local variable. The rest is just very simple templating inside of HTML. I simply go here and say star ng4. We recapped that already. Let m of what was the name here? Resulting makes. I do copy and paste because I often mistype. And here I just say double curly brace m. And if I didn't do something wrong, I should be able to type TO and I should see, oh my God, Aston Martin and Toyota. If I remove the O, I got this one. If I say AS, I get Maserati and again Aston Martin. Or let's say look for V, Volkswagen and Volvo. Even that one, but if I type V, everything is good. If anybody has a problem, please let me know. The beauty here, because of the debounce time, is if I take a look at the network traffic. Let's check the network traffic. Please take a look at the screen. If I type fast, TOY, I get a single request. Forget the first one, forget the second one. Yeah, this is not relevant. The first one is relevant. I get a single request with toy. Oda. And I get a single request with Toyota. See? It works. If I type in very slowly, backspace, 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 then I get a request for every change of the field. And that is this debounce time. Understand what I mean? The debouncing makes sure that a user that types fast will only lead to a few web requests. Change the resulting makes to an observable of string array. Obviously, you have to add an import statement. Delete the entire subscription. We do no longer subscribe, but instead we assign the value of the entire pipeline to this dot resulting makes. See that one? So I'm storing the observable in a variable, no longer the string array. I do not subscribe. Nobody subscribes currently. If you do that, you will get an error. So if I run this guy, it will no longer work. I get some strange error that resulting makes is no longer an ng iterable. Whatever ng iterable is, it is an error. What we have to change inside of the for statement here is a little bit of Harry Potter programming, a little bit of fairy dust, so it makes sure it works. And this fairy dust is called Async Pipe. And this is what Angular can do. Angular understands observable. So in our situation, if we go back, it still works now. See? Mistyped. So this async pipe, I will save it so you can copy the code from there. This async pipe here, this one, will do the subscribe for you. It will do the proper unsubscribe for you. All you have to specify is the pipeline. And the reactive part is provided by Angular. So that is a pretty powerful way of working. I want to just show you a last thing. Wouldn't it be nice if we reload the entire app if initially all the makes are visible? That would be nice, right? And guess what? It's just a pipeline. So what we can do here is we can say start with from the RxJS operators, this one. Start with is another operator. And we can say start with nothing, empty string. That will automatically, you see, whenever the app is loaded, start with simulating that the user didn't type in anything, but it initiates the first HTTP request. Get the idea? So if I reload it, I do nothing, and boom, I get everything. And then I can start typing. I think you get the point, right? So let's summarize what we learned today. We started with this set timeout and set interval stuff and a general discussion what an observable is. And we came up with various suggestions about real-world examples. I brought the example of the newspaper. Somebody brought the example of the clock or the alarm clock. And we played a little bit with it using TypeScript and Node.js. Then we learned how to read marble diagrams. And that brought us to operators like switch map and so on. And here you now see a practical example of how asynchronous programming with reactive forms and HTTP request works in Angular. And now you know why Angular is built on RxJS and why RxJS is so foundational to the understanding of Angular. Okay, I already shared this link with you, okay? So you can take a look at this link and I will keep it online. That's the first thing. The second thing is something that you will definitely like, homework. If you are signed in with your GitHub account, I think forever or whatever forever means. Long enough, long enough, long enough. So, homework. Homework will not be difficult. Don't worry, I will share the link with you. So what is the idea here? I want you to take the Share for Future database project that I gave you. It is ready-made. You do not need to do anything in that area. It's just there. My sample solution also contains a web API project. You do not need to create the project. It's already there for you. And I want you to extend it. I want you to build an application where I can search for offerings. So I want to have a Google-like search. So it's actually exactly the thing that we built today, but with your own API. For instance, imagine that you have a database, a shared database, with these 3 devices that somebody shared. A drilling machine from Makita, a Bosch drilling machine, and a beamer. So if I type in drill, I will get the first 2 results, because they contain the word drill in title and or description and or tags. If I type in cinema, I will get back the beamer because cinema is included in the tags. If I type in laptop, I should get no results. That is really simple. It's just a repetition of building a simple web API with applying an Angular RxJS project where you simply have to practice what we did today. However, I wanted to make a little bit more interesting for you. That is a multi-word search. So I can type in, for instance, what do we have? I type in drill and tool. In this case, I want you to search for drill, and I want you to search for tool, and I want to get back all the offerings that contains drill, tool, or drill and tool. And I want to get those first where we have the most matches. So, see, drill and tool, this should be the first one. The second one contains just drill, so this should be the second one. Get the idea? This, I want you to practice that. That is not complicated. You should be able to do that based on the things that we did in class within 1 or 2 hours. If you want to have extra points and an extra challenge, then you really go for RxJS. You do not use the banana in a box binding. You do not use the click event, but you really try to do the RxJS stuff with exactly the same kind of working that we did before. That should give you an extra point. So by just applying what we learned in this lesson, you get an extra point. And the last one, this is something for those of you who want to learn something new. You create an additional web API endpoint with which I can fill the database with auto-generated demo data. But this time, I will not give you a JSON file. But I invite you to take a look at the bogus library. I will not tell you what bogus is. Take a look at it. It's really awesome. It's great. I use it very frequently. Bogus is a funny name, but it describes perfectly what this library does, okay? So this is what I want you to do. Practice what we did today. Should be done within an hour or two, and for those of you who want to have an extra challenge, here you have it. With that, we are through. Thank you very much. I hope RxJS was interesting, and I hope everybody could follow along. See you next week.